Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today our guest is Sachin Shah. I'm very happy to have you here today, Sachin. Welcome.
Thank you, Asal. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. So let's start with our podcast for today. And before we begin to get into the topic, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely, Carol. Thank you. So my name is Sachin. I'm working as a CTO for operational technology. It's a mouthful word for Armis. But part of the talk, the introduction is operational technology has been in existence for almost about 200 plus years with all the critical infrastructure that exists across the globe, nuclear power plant, power generations, hospitals, emergency services, financial services. So you name it, many of this infrastructure is what we provide the cybersecurity for. And I've been in with Armis for almost about 10 months. And prior to joining Armis, I was working for a semiconductor manufacturing company in Shell for about 22 years.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. And with that being said, let's hop right into the topic. What would you like to share with us today?
So today, I would like to discuss how Armis strives to be the Google Maps for protecting this so-called, life safety systems and the critical infrastructure systems, as we call in a cyber world, cyber physical systems.
Sounds good. Then let's get into it. Can you then start with some key things about it?
Absolutely. So to give you from the layman terms, if you understand the Google Maps, how pretty awesome tool it is. It's a basic map providing all the information that you need to find a location, to get from point A to point B. It also goes much deeper into providing the details and the context that dramatically enhances the information that is available to you. Like if you want to go to a location and if you want to find what good restaurants are there, if the restaurant have a vegetarian options, if restaurant has, some other dietary restrictions, if the restaurants can seat many people. So as you can see, each information has lots of contextual information. Similarly, in the same context, Armis also provide the same information to an organization to discover and secure their assets. And not only just from one single niche point standpoint, like IT or operational technology or IoT, but the multispectral, unified asset visibility.
Yeah. And yeah, that sounds quite interesting. I mean, I really enjoyed also the example you gave with the Google Maps, because I think that's something everybody can understand. Do you want to maybe share some more key points about it, some more, like unique things, or like how, let's say our audience would like to use it, how, like, what can they expect, like more things about it?
Absolutely. So if you think about, critical infrastructure protections, primarily people get nostalgia in terms of what I talk about next is, okay, why does it matter? Now, I'll tell you why it matters. So if you understand the critical infrastructure, it entails or it directly deals with the life safety issues. That's one of the biggest risks that it is encompasses upon. Second, it is also a direct implication into the environmental impacts, and I'll go into much further details what it means. And the third, obviously, the industrial production interruptions or a factory down and whatnot. But if you look at the implications, if I have an infrastructure that is going to be running or managing the life safety of my employee, or the people who are working within my factory or operations, it is tremendously important. Everything set aside, life trumps everything. And this is why this is called critical infrastructure. It's not the terminology that, Armis or anybody else's, it's coined by all the governments. So depending on the globe that you're living in and the infrastructure that you manage, these are the critical infrastructure like nuclear power plants, electrifications, transportations, and so on and so forth. Hence, it is extremely important to protect this infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's, again, like as you said, it's critical. And while you were mentioning that, I heard some buzz topics or buzzwords actually, such as, like the environmental impact or risk and
Absolutely.
all those, like safety, security. So would you like to share more about any of those?
Correct. So if you look at, so when let's diverge into, okay, when we talk about critical infrastructure, let's pick a particular sector. So let's say if I'm picking a manufacturing sector, so critical manufacturing. And when I say manufacturing, you have to think about it encompasses everything and everything that a particular country or a region or a state or city does about that manufacturing. So whether they're producing, car productions, whether they're doing, cloth productions, whether they're doing medicine productions. So these are called manufacturing. Now, within that manufacturing factory, you have to encompass quite a few industrial control systems or operational technology systems that runs the factory, that gives you the production of those material that you go back and sell into the market for a profit. But to operate those factory, you need to incorporate water, you need to incorporate gas systems, you need to incorporate chemical systems, life safety systems, fire, vacuum systems. As you can see, the name of this system, they are all pertain to the utilities, but depending on the manufacturing sectors, some of those gas and chemical is not something that you think you can buy it out in the open market. You really need a government permissions to process this chemical in your factory plant. And this chemical is not something that you as an individual can handle it. It requires a proper skill set and the certifications issuance from government that you have a permit to process this chemical in your plant, because these are deadly chemicals. These are the chemicals that even if you go nearby without an understanding how to operate or how to handle, can literally kill you. And this is why to do the factory productions, it all goes back to the life safety. So if one of these chemical, let's say your factory is sitting surrounding the public property, and if your wastewater treatment let's get leaked or chemical has a leak and goes into the nearby public property, that is an environmental disaster that is in making. And this goes back directly to the branding of a company, and hence protecting this core keys to the kingdom of this critical infrastructure is extremely imperative.
Yeah, sounds actually quite like a good explanation as well. So I have one more question regarding that. So if you were to share a takeaway point with our viewers that they can think about or start implementing, what would it be?
One thing I can tell you, people go in a very blinded solutions in terms of, I just want to protect my factory. Or if we talk here from an IT standpoint, I only care about my IT systems. But if you think about Google Maps, if you want to go from point A to B, you want to understand everything that is in between. If a route is blocked, if a route has an accident, if something else is happening, if there's a fire and whatnot. Similarly, when it coined the term into the enterprise world, you must understand all your assets, not just IT, not just operational technology, not just ICS, not just Internet of Things or industrial IoT. You need to understand what's happening entirely at the scale within your infrastructure to understand the visibility of it, to provide protection and security.
Yes, actually, I really like that analogy. I think it really helps when you give an analogy that everybody can understand when it comes to these things and how important or critical it is to think about these things. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For that as well.
Absolutely, Karen.
Yeah, and I have one very short question. So you know a little bit about risk community, I believe. So do you want to share any remarks on like being part of a community or risk community in general?
Absolutely. In fact, maybe in one of the future episodes, what I'll probably bring the discussions about, excuse me, the critical infrastructure protections in making the past, present, and future. And the reason why it is important, because when we talk about this infrastructure, think about it, the risk. Risk is aversive in terms of, it's always going to be adjudicated in your environment. It's how much you can mitigate, how much you can remediate. And primarily, this infrastructure, I can guarantee you, these are 24/7, 365 days operation. So if a government is running a nuclear power plant, and there are vulnerabilities associated. Think about that nuclear power plant was built how long ago in a country or environment. and then there are vulnerability associated with it. So you cannot bring this down. So risk is always present. It's not that how are you gonna accumulate the risk posture and do the mitigations, but without not having an asset visibility as to what my asset is running, how my industrial asset is operating. Risk is always pervasive. And this is why I talk about life safety is your risk, environmental impact is your risk, and then factory impression or factory interruption or a dollar amount for a factory. But it is an absolutely ingredient as part of the critical infrastructure.
Thank you so much for that remark as well. I think risk is indeed in everything too, and like having a community or like people like you to share their knowledge about these things are really valuable, I think. So with that being said, unfortunately, we have run out of our time. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your insight, your knowledge with all those analogies and, you know, some important things I think our audience should be aware of. So thank you.
No, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol, so much for having me on your podcast. And
Yes,
it is really nice talking to you. And you have a good day.
yeah, likewise. Have a great day.